The timid maid whispered, "I would do anything for you," and he froze. Rahim's mornings were always the same, filled with the quiet hum of a household slowly coming to life. The sunlight barely reached his small room through the narrow window, yet it carried the warmth that reminded him another day had begun. He stretched, feeling the familiar ache in his back from the late-night work he often did to help his family make ends meet. Rahim came from a modest household. His father had passed away when he was young, leaving his mother and two younger siblings entirely dependent on him. Though the weight of responsibility sometimes felt heavy, he never complained. Life had taught him early on that struggles could not be wished away. They had to be faced, one small step at a time. In the kitchen, Aisha was already at work. She moved quietly, almost like a shadow that belonged to the walls, but her presence carried a sense of calm. She had joined their household 6 months ago, sent by her family from a small village nearby. She was young, barely in her early 20s, and her eyes carried a certain softness, a hint of shyness that made her seem smaller than she actually was. Her hands were gentle yet precise, whether she was cleaning, preparing meals, or arranging the living room. No one in the house had noticed just how much effort she put into every task until one day, Rahim had paused and watched her carefully. It was then that he realized how much she gave without ever asking for recognition. Rahim was often busy with work outside the home. He delivered parcels during the day and sometimes took small, odd jobs at night. Despite this, he always made it a point to return home before his mother went to sleep. Their home was not large, but it was warm with the kind of comfort only familiarity can give. His younger siblings would run to him as soon as he stepped through the door, their laughter echoing in the narrow hallway. Yet, even in these happy moments, Rahim's eyes often wandered to Aisha. She would quietly smile at the children, offer them little snacks she had prepared, and sometimes, if she thought no one was watching, brush a strand of hair from her mother's face as she worked. It was small, almost invisible gestures, but Rahim could see the care in every motion. Life in the household was not always peaceful. Money was tight, tensions sometimes flared, and worries seemed to grow with every passing day. There were mornings when Rahim would find his mother sitting at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the bills spread before her, her hands trembling slightly as she calculated what could be paid and what could not. On such days, Aisha was a quiet anchor. She would prepare a hot cup of tea, place it in front of his mother with a soft smile, and return to her chores without complaint. She never offered advice or asked questions, but her presence seemed to bring a sense of stability that words could never achieve. Rahim noticed this, though he rarely expressed it aloud. He respected her too much to do anything but watch quietly, learning from her patience and strength. The bond between Rahim and Aisha was slow to form. At first they exchanged only polite words, as employer and maid often do. Rahim would occasionally ask her to clean a particular room or help with a small task, and she would nod quietly, never forgetting a single instruction. But over time, small conversations began to happen. She would ask him about his day in her soft, hesitant voice, and he would answer briefly, not out of disinterest, but because he was unsure how to converse with someone who seemed so reserved. And yet, something in her made him want to share more than he usually did. Her patience, her understanding, the way she never judged or interrupted, it was different from any friendship he had known. There was a kindness in her that felt almost instinctive, like she understood the weight of the world without ever having to say a word. One rainy afternoon, a pipe in the kitchen burst, flooding the floor and sending his mother into a panic. Rahim rushed home from work to find Aisha already there, bucket in hand, attempting to manage the water. Her clothes were soaked, her hair clinging to her face, but she worked with quiet determination, calmly instructing the younger children to stay away from the slippery floor. Rahim froze for a moment, surprised at her quick thinking and bravery. In that instant, he realized he had underestimated her, not because she was a maid, but because he had never taken the time to truly see her as a person. She was strong, capable, and fearless when it mattered most. That day, as he helped her mop the water and repair the damage, Rahim felt a subtle shift in his perception. She was no longer just a part of the household. She was someone whose presence mattered deeply. Over the following weeks, Rahim found himself observing her more closely. He noticed the way she remembered the little things, the children's favorite meals, his mother's preferred cup of tea, the exact way his sister liked her room arranged. It seemed effortless for her, yet it was a labor of love. And though she never sought acknowledgement, Rahim felt a growing admiration for her dedication. It was not simply about completing tasks. It was about the care with which she carried out every detail. In a world where most people acted only for recognition or reward, Aisha's actions were genuine, quiet, and profoundly moving. Yet, it was not only her work ethic that captured Rahim's attention. It was the way she handled the subtle moments of life. When his mother was sad, she would sit quietly by her side, offering a hand on her shoulder. When his younger siblings were frightened or hurt, she would comfort them with a gentle voice that somehow erased their fear. Rahim began to understand that her kindness was not loud or flashy. It was steady, enduring, and unwavering. And in a life filled with responsibilities, deadlines, and the constant pressure to survive, such consistency was rare and beautiful. One evening, Rahim found himself staying late after dinner, trying to help his mother balance the household expenses. Aisha was in the kitchen, quietly washing dishes, her movements slow and deliberate, as if she was trying to preserve a sense of calm in the noisy, crowded home. He watched her for a moment, noticing how her eyes, though soft and timid, seemed to carry an inner strength that no one else could see. It struck him then that life had taught her resilience in ways he could not fully comprehend. She had faced her own struggles, far from her family, living in a strange city with little support, and yet she carried herself with dignity, kindness, and grace. From that day forward, Rahim felt a subtle, unspoken connection with her. It was not romantic, not yet, but it was something equally profound, a recognition of the human spirit, a quiet acknowledgement of courage, patience, and selflessness. In her, he saw a reflection of the values he held dear, and for the first time, he began to feel that maybe life was not only about struggles and burdens, but also about the small, unnoticed acts of care that held the world together. Rahim's mornings continued as they always had, but his perspective had shifted. The timid maid who moved quietly through the household was no longer invisible to him. Every small gesture she made, every soft smile she offered, carried meaning and purpose. He began to realize that in the chaos of life, it was people like Aisha who made the difference. The ones who worked without recognition, loved without expectation, and brought stability to a world that often seemed uncertain. And though neither of them spoke of it, a silent understanding had formed between them, a shared acknowledgement of effort, empathy, and resilience that connected them in ways words could not yet define. As the sun set each evening, Rahim would sometimes find himself watching her quietly, wondering what dreams she carried, what fears she hid, and what stories had shaped the quiet strength she displayed every day. He did not need answers, and he did not expect confessions. All he knew was that her presence had changed something within him. He felt a deep respect for her, a growing sense of admiration, and an awareness that life was far richer when one noticed the people who worked in the shadows, whose contributions were often unseen but never insignificant. By the time the household settled into silence for the night, Rahim often reflected on the simple truths he had learned. Kindness was powerful, patience was rare, and loyalty could be found in the most unexpected places. Aisha, the timid maid who whispered little words and carried out her tasks with quiet dignity, had already begun to leave a lasting impression on him. And though their story was just beginning, the foundation had been laid for understanding, for trust, and perhaps, in time, for something far deeper than either of them had yet imagined. Life in Rahim's household continued, but with new challenges that tested both patience and resilience. Money remained tight, and the weight of responsibilities pressed heavily on him every day. Yet, the quiet presence of Aisha, the timid maid, continued to make a subtle difference. Her dedication, though unnoticed by most, had begun to affect Rahim in ways he could not quite put into words. Every small act she performed, arranging the children's school books, preparing meals with care, or simply listening without judgment, brought a sense of calm to the household. Rahim, though often absorbed in his own struggles, started noticing these little gestures more and more. One afternoon, a particularly difficult situation arose. Rahim's younger sister had fallen ill suddenly, and his mother was too anxious to focus on anything else. The household atmosphere grew tense, with worries about medical expenses and the girl's recovery filling every corner. Aisha, as always, stepped in quietly but efficiently. She helped prepare the necessary medicine, boiled water, and even cleaned the room to make it more comfortable for the sick girl. While Rahim was out handling an urgent errand, Aisha stayed behind, ensuring the household ran smoothly despite the growing stress. When Rahim returned that evening, he found his sister resting peacefully in bed, the room tidy and his mother surprisingly calm. He looked at Aisha, standing quietly by the doorway, her hands folded in front of her. He realized then that she had not only done her duties but had gone far beyond them. She had brought stability and care to a home that was on the brink of panic. For the first time, Rahim felt a deep appreciation for her, not just for her work, but for the quiet strength and empathy that she carried in her heart. Over the next few weeks, Rahim found himself interacting with Aisha more intentionally. Before, he had observed her quietly from a distance, but now he began engaging in conversations. At first, they were small and cautious. He would ask about her day or how she managed her family back in the village. Her responses were soft, humble, and thoughtful. She never complained, nor did she seek sympathy. Instead, she spoke with a quiet honesty that made Rahim feel both comforted and humbled. Through these conversations, he began to understand the challenges she had faced to arrive at this point in her life, leaving her family behind, adjusting to a city she barely knew, and navigating a job that demanded patience, resilience, and discretion. One rainy evening, as the clouds poured over the city and the wind howled outside, Rahim was struggling to repair a broken water pipe in the kitchen. Aisha appeared at his side with a small toolbox she had carried unnoticed. "Let me help," she said softly, her timid voice barely audible over the rain. Rahim froze for a moment, not expecting her to offer assistance in such a direct way. But then he noticed the determination in her eyes and the way she handled the tools with surprising skill. Together, they managed to fix the leak, laughing softly at their clumsy attempts and small failures along the way. It was a simple moment, yet it carried an unspoken message. She was willing to stand by him in times of difficulty, no matter how challenging the task. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Rahim and Aisha grew stronger, though it remained subtle. Their connection was not based on words of love or promises. It was built on shared struggles, mutual respect, and the understanding that life could be hard, but it was easier when someone cared silently and genuinely. Rahim began noticing how Aisha's presence influenced the children. They loved her quietly, often seeking her guidance in small matters, from helping with homework to learning how to be patient and kind. She never scolded, never demanded attention, but she had a natural ability to guide and support, leaving a lasting impression on everyone in the house. Yet, life was not without its trials. One afternoon, Rahim returned home to find his mother visibly upset. A neighbor had threatened to demand payment for a small loan and tensions were rising. The children were frightened, sensing the anxiety in the air. Aisha, as always, acted quickly. She comforted the children, reassuring them with a soft voice that everything would be okay, and then calmly helped Rahim's mother prepare a plan to manage the situation. She suggested small but practical steps, never overstepping her role but ensuring that the household could handle the problem with dignity. Rahim watched quietly, realizing that Aisha's value went far beyond her duties as a maid. She was a source of emotional support, guidance, and stability. One evening, after the children had gone to bed, Rahim and Aisha found themselves alone in the living room. The room was dimly lit, and a gentle rain tapped against the windows. Rahim spoke first, hesitantly, sharing his worries about the family, his job, and the future. Aisha listened without interruption, her calm presence giving him a strange sense of relief. Then she spoke softly, not offering solutions, but sharing her own experiences and struggles from the village. Her words were filled with humility, patience, and wisdom. Rahim realized that in her quiet way, she had endured hardships far greater than his own, and yet had emerged compassionate and strong. That night, he felt a deep sense of respect and admiration for her. A turning point came when Rahim faced a serious setback at work. A client refused to pay for services he had completed, leaving him short on funds just when the household needed money the most. He returned home exhausted, frustrated, and worried. For a moment, he felt the weight of the world pressing down, unsure how to manage the situation. Aisha, noticing his distress, approached him quietly. She did not offer to solve his problems with money, nor did she suggest that he was failing. Instead, she spoke in her soft, calm voice. "I will help you. Whatever you need, I will do my best." Rahim froze at her words. It was not simply her willingness to help. It was the sincerity, the selflessness, and the courage behind them. In that moment, he realized that she had become more than just a maid or a helper. She had become a part of his life in a way he could not easily define. Her dedication was not born from obligation or duty. It came from genuine care, a quiet strength that asked nothing in return. From that day forward, Rahim began to rely on her in small ways, not because he was weak, but because he recognized that trust and support were precious and rare, and that Aisha offered them freely. She helped organize the household, assisted with financial planning in small ways, and provided emotional support when tensions ran high. Her presence brought a sense of balance and calm that allowed Rahim to face challenges with greater confidence. Through these shared experiences, the bond between Rahim and Aisha deepened. It was no longer just about observing or admiring. It was about understanding, partnership, and silent friendship. They began sharing small moments of joy, a cup of tea after a long day, laughter over a minor household mishap, quiet conversations during the rain. The connection was gentle, respectful, and profoundly human. Rahim realized that trust, empathy, and loyalty could be found in unexpected places, and that the timid maid, whom he had barely noticed months ago, had become a pillar of strength in his life. The story of those weeks was not filled with grand events or dramatic changes. Instead, it was built from small, meaningful moments. Aisha's quiet assistance during crises, her patient guidance with the children, her soft words of comfort during nights of worry, and her unwavering presence when the world seemed uncertain. Rahim learned that life's most valuable relationships often emerged quietly, without fanfare, and that those who gave selflessly could leave a lasting mark on one's heart. By the end of part 2, Rahim found himself reflecting on the lessons Aisha had taught him without ever speaking them outright. Patience matters, loyalty matters, and sometimes the most profound strength is found in quiet, humble hearts. He began to understand that human connections were not measured by grand gestures, but by the everyday acts of care, attention, and understanding that often go unnoticed. Aisha, in her quiet, unassuming way, had become the steady force in the household, guiding it through challenges, providing comfort, and showing that true support was a gift freely given, not demanded. Rahim could see the impact she had on everyone, his family, the children, and himself. And though neither of them spoke openly about it yet, there was a subtle understanding that their bond had deepened, laying the groundwork for something far more meaningful in the days to come. The days in Rahim's household had settled into a routine, yet life had a way of introducing unexpected moments that could shift everything. Rahim had grown accustomed to relying on Aisha, not as a maid or a helper, but as someone who quietly understood the household, its challenges, and its people. Her presence had become a source of comfort, a quiet reassurance that even when life seemed overwhelming, there was someone steady by his side. Yet, despite the growing bond, Rahim had not fully realized the depth of her loyalty and care until one evening that changed everything. It had been a particularly long day. Rahim had worked from dawn until late evening, running errands, negotiating with clients, and managing household expenses. His back ached, his hands were sore, and he felt the familiar weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. The children had homework to finish. His mother was tired from worrying about unpaid bills, and small domestic tasks piled up as if to mock him. When he finally stepped into the house, the sight of Aisha calmly moving through the rooms brought a brief sense of relief. She had prepared dinner, helped the children with their lessons, and even managed to tidy the living room, her movements precise and graceful despite the long day. Rahim dropped his bag and leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. He had never truly realized how much he depended on her. She had become more than a presence in the household. She had become its backbone. And yet, until now, their interactions had been limited to polite conversations, shared work, and small exchanges of kindness. He had admired her silently, but he had not anticipated what was about to happen. It started with a small incident. Rahim had been frustrated over an unpaid bill, pacing the hallway and muttering to himself. The tension in the room was palpable and the children looked on nervously. Aisha approached him cautiously, her timid voice barely audible. "Rahim, can I help?" She didn't offer solutions immediately, nor did she demand attention. She simply extended herself, willing to share the burden he had been carrying alone. Her sincerity caught him off guard. Rahim shook his head, feeling both surprised and conflicted. I can handle it," he replied, his voice uneven with exhaustion. He had grown used to managing everything himself, and the thought of accepting help, even from someone he trusted, felt strange. Aisha, however, did not retreat. She simply stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes filled with quiet determination. Then softly, almost in a whisper, she said the words that would change the course of their relationship. "I would do anything for you." Rahim froze. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight he had never expected. They were not dramatic or demanding, but they were sincere, heartfelt, and filled with a sense of devotion that left him momentarily speechless. He stared at her, his mind racing to process what she had just said. It was not just a declaration of loyalty. It was an acknowledgement of the trust and bond that had quietly grown between them over the past months. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Rahim struggled to respond. The emotions swirling within him were complex: gratitude, admiration, a hint of guilt for never noticing her fully before, and an overwhelming sense of responsibility toward her. He realized in that instant that Aisha had been quietly carrying her own struggles while supporting his family, and she had never asked for recognition or reward. She had given everything she could, her time, her energy, her care, without expecting anything in return. Aisha's eyes did not waver. She waited patiently, understanding that her words had an impact, yet confident in the sincerity behind them. Rahim's heart raced as he felt a mixture of awe and respect for her. He had always considered her shy and timid, but now he saw a strength that went far beyond what appearances suggested. Her courage was not loud or aggressive. It was quiet, steady, and unwavering. She had offered herself not for personal gain, but out of genuine care and loyalty. The children, sensing the tension in the room, watched from a distance. They did not understand the full meaning of the exchange, but they felt the intensity of the moment. Rahim took a deep breath, realizing that this was a pivotal point, not in a dramatic sense, but in the way lives quietly shifted through honesty, vulnerability, and trust. He had always believed that strength was visible, loud, and undeniable. Yet here was a person who had demonstrated it in the softest, most unassuming way possible. Over the next few minutes, Rahim and Aisha spoke, but their conversation was different from any they had shared before. He asked about her life, her family, her hopes, and her struggles. She answered honestly, her voice soft but filled with clarity. She spoke about the sacrifices she had made to work in the city, the loneliness of being away from her family, and the small joys she found in helping others. Rahim listened intently, feeling a growing understanding of the woman he had admired from a distance. The timid maid was not just a part of the household. She was a person of incredible depth, resilience, and kindness. That evening, Rahim reflected on everything that had brought them to this point. He remembered the rainy afternoon when she had helped repair the kitchen pipe, the nights she had stayed to comfort the children, and the quiet ways she had managed crises without complaint. He realized that her declaration, "I would do anything for you," was not a simple offer of help. It was a culmination of months of dedication, empathy, and shared experiences. It was a statement of trust, loyalty, and courage that had quietly shaped the household's well-being. Rahim's perspective on Aisha shifted profoundly. He began to see her not just as a helper, but as a partner in the daily struggles of life. Her quiet acts of care had created a foundation of stability and warmth that allowed him to focus on his responsibilities without feeling entirely alone. And now, after hearing her words, he understood that her devotion was intentional, heartfelt, and rare. She had chosen to stand by him and his family, not out of obligation, but because she cared deeply. The impact of her words extended beyond just Rahim. The household itself seemed to change subtly. His mother, noticing a new sense of ease in her son, began to relax more often. The children sensed the trust and respect that now existed between Rahim and Aisha, and they responded with greater affection and cooperation. Even the mundane tasks of daily life seemed lighter, as if the air carried a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. Over the following days, Rahim found himself more attentive, more thoughtful, and more willing to communicate openly. He began asking Aisha for her opinions, listening to her advice, and recognizing the small, meaningful ways she contributed to the household. He realized that trust and respect were earned not through grand gestures, but through consistent care, honesty, and quiet dedication. Aisha had demonstrated all of these qualities, and in doing so, had earned a place of profound importance in his life. Their relationship evolved naturally. There was no rush, no dramatic declarations, only a growing understanding and mutual appreciation. Rahim began to notice the little things, the careful way she arranged the children's school books, the small notes she left to remind him of tasks, and the way she always seemed to know when someone needed comfort or encouragement. These moments, simple as they were, created a sense of connection and trust that could not be broken easily. One evening, as Rahim sat quietly in the living room, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the timid maid who moved through the house unnoticed, to the person who now stood beside him in moments of difficulty, Aisha had transformed the way he understood loyalty, courage, and care. Her offer, "I would do anything for you," was no longer just words. It was a promise, a reflection of her character and a testament to the quiet strength that defined her. Rahim realized that life often revealed its most valuable lessons in subtle ways. Strength was not always visible, and loyalty was not always loud. Sometimes it came in whispers, in soft gestures, and in consistent acts of kindness that went unnoticed by most. Aisha's words and actions had shown him that true courage was about standing by someone not for recognition or reward, but out of genuine care and empathy. By the end of Part 3, Rahim felt a deep sense of gratitude and admiration. He understood that their relationship had reached a turning point, not because of dramatic events, but because of trust, sincerity, and the quiet acknowledgement of each other's value. Aisha had revealed the depth of her character, and in doing so, had changed the way Rahim viewed loyalty, support, and human connection. The timid maid had shown him that courage and devotion could exist in the gentlest of hearts, and that life's most meaningful relationships often emerged in the quietest, most unexpected ways. From that evening onward, their bond continued to grow, strengthened by trust, respect, and shared experiences. Rahim began to see the world through a slightly different lens, appreciating the subtle acts of kindness that often went unnoticed. And Aisha, in her quiet and unassuming way, remained the steadfast presence who had silently shaped the household, proving that true loyalty and courage were often hidden behind gentle eyes and a soft voice. After that evening, the household felt different, though it was hard to explain how. Life went on as usual, with the children running around, homework to finish, meals to prepare, and bills to manage. But Rahim sensed a subtle shift in everything. The way he viewed Aisha, the way he felt about the responsibilities he carried, and even the way the household seemed calmer. Her quiet words, "I would do anything for you," echoed in his mind, reminding him that loyalty, care, and strength often lived in the gentlest hearts. Rahim began to reflect more deeply on her presence. Before, he had seen her as the helpful maid who completed her tasks diligently. Now, he saw someone who had quietly stood beside him through the toughest moments, offering support without judgment or expectation. The respect he felt for her grew daily, and with it, a responsibility, a need to honor her dedication, to acknowledge her efforts, and to ensure that she never felt undervalued. The changes in their relationship were subtle at first. Rahim began to ask for her advice on small matters, how to organize the household more efficiently, how to manage finances better, and even how to comfort the children during moments of distress. Aisha offered her guidance quietly, never asserting herself, but sharing her insights with thoughtfulness and care. The way she spoke, so soft yet firm, helped Rahim realize that she had wisdom beyond her years, born from experience and resilience. One morning, a minor crisis arose that tested their growing bond. Rahim's youngest sister had lost her school notebook, an event that sent the household into a mild panic. The children were upset, his mother was anxious, and Rahim himself felt frustrated and short-tempered after a long night of work. Aisha noticed the tension immediately. Instead of reacting with irritation, she calmly guided everyone, helping to search for the missing notebook. She found it tucked away under a chair, where the child had left it absent-mindedly. Her gentle handling of the situation prevented what could have been an emotional explosion, turning a moment of chaos into a lesson in patience and problem-solving. Moments like these continued to reinforce Rahim's understanding of her character. He saw how she managed the household's emotional climate, keeping everyone calm while balancing her own workload. Her dedication was not limited to chores. It extended to caring for each family member's feelings, noticing unspoken needs, and creating an atmosphere of stability and warmth. He realized that her value could not be measured in simple terms. She had become a cornerstone of the household's well-being. The trust between them deepened further during a particularly difficult week. Rahim faced unexpected financial pressure when a client delayed payment, leaving him struggling to cover household expenses. The worry and stress began to weigh heavily on him, and he found himself staying up late, calculating numbers and trying to find solutions. Aisha noticed his fatigue and quietly stepped in to help. She suggested practical ways to reduce costs, helped prioritize the essential expenses, and even took extra care to ensure the children felt secure despite the tension in the home. It was during this week that Rahim truly understood the impact of her earlier words. She had meant them, not as a passing statement, but as a genuine offer of support. And she had demonstrated that commitment in every action since. Rahim realized that he could rely on her not because he had to, but because she had shown herself trustworthy, loyal, and selfless. The respect he felt for her grew into something deeper, a profound understanding of human kindness and devotion. As the days passed, Rahim also began to notice changes in himself. Her presence had taught him patience, humility, and the importance of empathy. He found himself more willing to communicate openly, more ready to share his concerns, and more attentive to the needs of others. He realized that leadership was not about commanding or controlling. It was about recognizing the contributions of others, valuing their efforts, and creating an environment where everyone felt respected and supported. Aisha's quiet strength had become a lesson for him, guiding him toward a better understanding of what it meant to care for those around him. One evening, after a long day, Rahim sat with Aisha while the children were asleep. He spoke about the pressures he faced at work, his worries about the household, and his dreams for a more stable future. Aisha listened attentively, her eyes calm and understanding. She did not interrupt or offer criticism. She simply provided her presence, which somehow made the weight of his troubles lighter. In that quiet moment, Rahim felt an emotional connection he had never experienced before, a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual understanding. He realized that she had become not just a helper, but a confidant, someone who could share the emotional burdens of life without judgment. This understanding extended to the children as well. They began to respond more openly to Aisha, seeking her guidance and comfort in times of need. She never imposed herself, but her presence was reassuring, and her advice carried weight because it was rooted in kindness and experience. Rahim watched this quietly, noticing how the household had transformed from a place of tension and stress into one of warmth, cooperation, and mutual respect. Aisha had helped create this environment not through commands or authority, but through patience, empathy, and consistent care. The emotional impact of her loyalty also became apparent in subtle ways. Rahim found himself smiling more often, feeling a sense of relief even in difficult situations, and appreciating the small joys of daily life. Her presence reminded him that support could be found in unexpected places, that strength could be quiet and unassuming, and that true devotion was shown through actions rather than words. He began to see life differently, understanding that moments of struggle were not meant to be faced alone, and that companionship, silent, steady, and trustworthy, was one of life's most valuable gifts. One day, Rahim's mother fell ill with a high fever. The household was in mild chaos, with everyone worried about her health. Aisha immediately stepped forward, preparing medicine, monitoring her condition, and ensuring that the children were fed and comforted. Her calm demeanor helped prevent panic, allowing Rahim to focus on taking his mother to the doctor and managing household tasks. He realized that her earlier declaration of loyalty was not just words, it was a promise that she had lived every day. She had truly stood by them, and her actions now saved the family from unnecessary stress and fear. The experience deepened Rahim's appreciation for Aisha. He began to reflect on all the ways she had supported the household, her quiet problem-solving, her attention to emotional needs, and her consistent presence during moments of difficulty. He realized that she had taught him the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and care. Her strength was not flashy or dramatic, but it was unwavering and profoundly impactful. In the following weeks, Rahim became more intentional in recognizing her contributions. He would ask for her input, express gratitude for her efforts, and ensure that her work was valued. The children, too, began to treat her with greater respect and affection, understanding that she was more than a helper. She was a guide, a supporter, and a steady presence in their lives. Even his mother noticed the change, acknowledging quietly that Aisha had become essential to the household's happiness and stability. The emotional impact of these events extended beyond the household. Rahim began to see his relationships with others differently, appreciating the quiet support of friends, neighbors, and colleagues. He realized that loyalty, empathy, and selflessness were qualities to be cherished and nurtured. Aisha had shown him that the most meaningful bonds were built not on words, but on consistent actions, understanding, and care. By the end of Part 4, Rahim's perspective on life, relationships, and responsibility had shifted significantly. He understood that true strength was often quiet, that loyalty could be expressed through small, consistent acts, and that love and care were shown through empathy and understanding rather than grand gestures. Aisha had not only supported him and his family, but had also helped him grow as a person, more patient, more understanding, and more capable of appreciating the value of those around him. Her presence had transformed the household. What was once a place of tension and quiet struggle had become a home filled with warmth, understanding, and mutual respect. The children were happier, his mother was calmer, and Rahim himself felt more confident and supported. Aisha's loyalty and care had created a ripple effect, touching everyone in the home and leaving a lasting impression that could not be measured by words alone. Rahim often reflected on the phrase she had whispered months ago, "I would do anything for you." He realized that the true meaning of those words was not in dramatic declarations, but in everyday actions, in patience, empathy, and selfless support. Aisha had lived those words every day, quietly shaping their lives and creating a bond that would endure far beyond the challenges they faced. Through all the difficulties, the household had grown stronger. Rahim understood that life's trials were easier when faced with someone trustworthy, kind, and selfless. He had learned to value the quiet, steadfast people in his life, to recognize the impact of small, consistent acts of care, and to appreciate the emotional strength that often goes unnoticed. And at the heart of this realization was Aisha, the timid maid whose quiet devotion had changed everything, leaving an indelible mark on the family and on Rahim himself. Life slowly began to settle into a rhythm that was warmer and more harmonious than ever before. Rahim, Aisha, his mother, and the children had faced challenges together, and each day brought small victories that strengthened their bond. The household no longer felt like a place of tension or stress. Instead, it had become a home filled with trust, understanding, and quiet joy. The children laughed more freely, his mother seemed calmer, and Rahim himself felt a sense of relief he had rarely experienced. In this transformation, the subtle influence of Aisha had played a central role. Aisha continued her work with the same dedication as always, but now she moved through the household with a quiet confidence that came from being acknowledged and respected. She no longer felt invisible or undervalued. Her efforts were appreciated by everyone in the home. Rahim had learned to communicate openly with her, asking for her opinions and guidance, and listening sincerely to her advice. In return, Aisha offered her support not out of obligation, but out of genuine care, understanding that she was now a trusted member of the family rather than just a helper. One afternoon, Rahim received news that a long-delayed payment had finally been made by a client. Relief flooded over him, and for the first time in weeks, he felt a lightness in his heart. He returned home eager to share the news with his mother and the children. Aisha was already in the kitchen, preparing snacks for the children after their homework. When Rahim shared the good news, she smiled softly, her eyes reflecting quiet satisfaction. It was not a dramatic celebration. There were no loud cheers or fanfare. Instead, there was a shared sense of accomplishment, a mutual understanding that challenges had been overcome together. This small victory highlighted a deeper truth for Rahim. Life's successes were sweeter when shared with those who stood by you during hardships. Aisha had not only helped the household survive difficult times, but had also shaped the emotional strength of everyone in it. The children had learned resilience, his mother had found comfort in her presence, and Rahim himself had grown more patient, thoughtful, and empathetic. Aisha's loyalty and care had created ripples that extended far beyond her role as a maid. They had transformed the very spirit of the household. As weeks turned into months, the bond between Rahim and Aisha grew steadily. They did not speak of feelings in the dramatic sense. Instead, their connection was built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and an unspoken understanding of each other's character. Rahim admired her resilience, patience, and quiet courage, while Aisha valued his sincerity, kindness, and willingness to recognize her efforts. Together, they created an environment where trust and compassion were the foundation of everyday life. One day, Rahim's mother fell ill again, this time with a mild fever that required her to rest for a few days. The children were anxious, and Rahim was concerned about managing everything alone. Aisha stepped forward without hesitation. She prepared nourishing meals, ensured the children were occupied with their studies, and provided comfort to Rahim when he appeared overwhelmed. Her calm presence allowed him to focus on his mother's care without panicking. In moments like these, Rahim realized the depth of her loyalty once more. Her earlier words, "I would do anything for you," had been proven true time and again, not through grand gestures but through quiet, consistent support. Over time, Rahim began to reflect on the lessons he had learned from Aisha. He realized that life was not only about managing responsibilities or striving for personal success. It was also about noticing the people who quietly supported you, valuing their contributions, and cultivating relationships based on trust, empathy, and respect. Aisha had shown him that true strength was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, enduring, and often unseen. Her loyalty had been a mirror, reflecting the best qualities he had yet to fully recognize in himself: patience, compassion, and the ability to appreciate the small but meaningful acts of kindness that shape lives. The children, too, had grown under her influence. They learned that courage was not always about loud proclamations or bold actions. Sometimes, it was in being gentle, consistent, and thoughtful. They saw in her a role model of resilience, someone who could handle challenges calmly and effectively. Rahim observed with quiet pride how his siblings began to emulate her patience and kindness, learning lessons that extended beyond textbooks and daily routines. Aisha's impact was shaping the next generation of their family in ways he could not have imagined. As the household continued to thrive, Rahim and Aisha shared many small but significant moments together. They would sit quietly in the evenings, sharing a cup of tea while the children played nearby. They would exchange smiles over minor household successes or laugh softly at little mistakes made during chores. These moments were simple, yet they carried profound meaning. They represented trust, companionship, and the understanding that life was richer when shared with someone dependable and caring. One afternoon, Rahim found himself reflecting on how much had changed since Aisha had joined their household. The timid, shy girl who had first appeared quietly in the background had become an integral part of their lives. Her loyalty, patience, and courage had transformed the household's atmosphere and taught him lessons that could not be found in books or lectures. He realized that true devotion was rare, and that those who offered it without expectation deserved respect, gratitude, and recognition. Aisha, for her part, had grown more confident and self-assured. She moved through the household with ease, no longer shrinking into the background but contributing fully to its harmony and well-being. Her quiet influence had reshaped the home, creating a space where love, trust, and mutual respect were felt by all. She had become not only a helper but a trusted confidant, a guide for the children, and a source of emotional stability for Rahim and his mother. One evening, as the family sat together sharing a simple meal, Rahim noticed the gentle smile on Aisha's face. It was not a smile of seeking approval or recognition. It was a smile of satisfaction, of fulfillment, and of belonging. He realized that her happiness came not from praise, but from the knowledge that she had made a difference, that her efforts had been meaningful, and that her loyalty had been appreciated. In that moment, Rahim felt a profound sense of gratitude. He understood that the lessons of their journey were far greater than the challenges they had faced. He had learned to recognize the strength in quiet people, to value consistent acts of kindness, and to appreciate the power of loyalty and trust. Aisha had taught him that life's most meaningful relationships were often built not on words, but on actions and shared experiences. She had shown him that courage could be gentle, devotion could be subtle, and that love and care were expressed through empathy, patience, and steadfast support. As days turned into months and months into years, the household remained a place of warmth, stability, and trust. The children grew up surrounded by the lessons of kindness, patience, and loyalty they had learned from Aisha. Rahim continued to work hard, but he no longer carried the burdens alone. He had learned to rely on those he trusted, to value their contributions, and to acknowledge the quiet strength of those who supported him without question. The story of their lives became a quiet testament to the power of empathy, loyalty, and shared responsibility. Rahim understood that success was not measured by wealth or status, but by the quality of relationships and the impact one had on others' lives. Aisha's presence had shown him that the people who might seem timid or unassuming often possess remarkable strength, courage, and wisdom. Their devotion, when acknowledged and respected, could transform not only a household but the hearts of those they touched. By the end, Rahim and Aisha had formed a bond that went beyond roles and titles. She was no longer just a maid. She was a trusted companion, a source of guidance, and an integral part of the family's emotional foundation. Her quiet acts of care had shaped the household's happiness, and her loyalty had earned a place in Rahim's heart that could never be replaced. Reflecting on everything, Rahim realized that life's most valuable lessons were often learned through ordinary people performing extraordinary acts of kindness. Aisha had shown him that true strength was quiet, loyalty was profound, and compassion could change lives in ways that were subtle but lasting. He carried these lessons forward, not only in his relationship with her, but in every interaction with others. The timid maid who had whispered, "I would do anything for you," had left a permanent mark on their lives. Her words were not just a declaration, they were a lived truth, demonstrated in every thoughtful action, every act of support, and every moment of quiet courage. And as the household continued to thrive, Rahim, his family, and Aisha knew that their lives had been transformed by the power of loyalty, trust, and the simple, profound strength of a kind and devoted heart. In the end, the story was not about drama, wealth, or fame. It was about humanity, empathy, and the quiet bonds that give life meaning. Rahim had learned that the people who seem small or timid often carry the greatest strength, and Aisha had proven that devotion and loyalty, when genuine, could create lasting happiness, stability, and hope. Their shared journey was a testament to the power of compassion, the importance of trust, and the enduring value of quietly making a difference in the lives of others.